Richard Alexander, attorney Richard Alexander to the show Alexander Law, great friend of the program and always keeping us informed with some new stuff. Tell me, what's going to happen for holiday drivers that aren't careful this season?
Yeah, notoriously, this is the time of year, Thanksgiving all the way into Christmas into the following New Year. This is DUIs go through the roof, and it's a problem in the state of Florida just without the holidays. So you can imagine, the law enforcement is incredibly busy. Law enforcement is very aggressive when it comes to DUI driving, and they are, kind of under the gun to, make sure that they get these people off the road, because not just for their own safety, of course, but for the safety of others.
Sure, we consider, I guess because it's probably a product of my age, I think of alcohol all the time. But there's a number of things going on out in the roadways now. I see all kinds of alerts about prescription meds, opioids, this, that, and the other. You got to be careful about what you're doing anytime you get behind the wheel.
Right, and DUI, a lot of people associate DUI, and rightfully so, with alcohol, but the law is, chemical substance, controlled substance, or alcohol, to the extent that your normal faculties are impaired.
Right.
So, a lot of people make the mistake saying, well, I can't be DUI, it was prescribed by a doctor.
Right.
Well, that's not the law. The law says it doesn't matter if it is prescribed. That's not the issue. The issue is it affecting your ability, your normal faculties? Are they impaired by that medically prescribed Xanax, for instance? That's the law.
And there's not necessarily a rule of thumb. Guys always say, well, I weigh 250 pounds. It'll take me 3 drinks or whatever it'll take. There's no way to calculate that, the way it's going to affect your blood.
There is a type of calculation, because they're really measuring, the intoxilizer really measures, breath is what it does. And it measures grams of alcohol per 210 liters of breath is what it does. So it's supposed to be neutral based, and it's not really taking into account someone's weight and size.
Right.
I always tell people the one sure thing, of course, 2 things I always tell people. I said, number 1, take your time when you're consuming alcohol. And number 2, make sure you're not doing it on an empty stomach.
Absolutely.
Those are 2 rule of thumbs that can go a long way to, lessen the probability that you can get pulled over.
Now, in the event that you are pulled over, what do you advise? What's the proper reaction from someone in that situation?
Well, Brandon and I have talked about this before, that one's driver's license is only tied back to the test, the intoxilizer. So if you ever have a driver's license, if you read it, it says that, if you remember.
Yeah, I recall you pointing that out in the program.
It says required by law.
Yeah,
so when everybody signs their driver's license, whether they know it or not, they have already given consent that if they're asked to provide a breath sample, they will do so.
I guarantee most people are completely unaware that their
Absolutely
signature.
not. Look at your driver's license just below your signature, and it says right on there that you have already consented that you will give a breath sample, as required by law.
And we're so used to just agreeing to the terms on every single thing all day long. You don't even think about what you're doing.
Well, you want a driver's license, right?
Absolutely.
You're going to have to jump through their hoops.
So, in addition to being careful with your consumption and knowing about where you are, what other have you seen in terms of court cases that go to court when it comes to DUI? What are some of the nuances that make someone guilty or innocent, or what are some of the things you've seen?
Well, DUIs are a really complicated animal. They really are. And the reason they're complicated, I call DUIs mini murder trials, because they really are fascinating just from start to finish. And every DUI is divided up into 2 phases. Number 1 is the driver's license phase, because by virtue of the fact that, having a driver's license is a privilege, it's not a right.
Right.
So if you get arrested for DUI, it automatically affects your driver's license. If you refuse, your license will be suspended minimum 1 year.
So regardless of your reaction, there is a penalty coming.
Oh, there's a penalty coming, and it's not one you're going to like, because in the state of Florida, public transportation pretty much is non-existent.
Yeah.
If they take your license in New York, you probably couldn't care less. Like, I'll take a cab, I'll take, the bus, I'll take the trains.
I see what you mean.
Who cares? But here, with public transportation just being non-existent, it's a problem.
Yeah, you better be Lance Armstrong if you're going to bike across the bridge.
So phase 1 is the driver's license side.
Right.
Phase 2 is the state attorney's office and the criminal side. And every DUI is divided up into 2 components. And the first one is all about the driver's license, whether or not you want to set the hearing, whether or not you want to waive the hearing and get a hardship immediately. There's a lot of things, and you only have 10 days to make that decision.
And meanwhile, the state attorney's office is weighing their case, kind of seeing what the factors are to influence their prosecution?
Oh, they're going to prosecute a DUI case. They'd rather lose it at trial or lose it in motion practice than dismiss it.
Understood.
I've never had a case that was dismissed outright unless there was something really egregious. And both times that came pretty close, they were knocked down to careless driving. Both times that came close, it was law enforcement that was caught on his own dash cam video doing something he shouldn't have been doing.
Tell me, do you ever see any more people challenge the calibration of the instrument itself? I remember a case where the guy said it was dropped or bumped on the way to administering the test, and therefore it needed to be recalibrated, and then actually got the guy off on that.
You can certainly do that. I mean, the intoxilizer, the records to the intoxilizer are a public record. They test the intoxilizer every month and every year.
Right.
And yeah, sometimes you can find some irregularities in the intoxilizer results as far as calibration. That could certainly go a long way as to negotiating with the state
Right.
to amend the charge.
That's interesting. Tell me, there's a negotiation. What fact? I mean, what is that like? Tell me what contentions are going back and forth.
The state attorney's office just absolutely refuses or hates to drop DUI cases. There has to be something egregious, something just, catastrophic in order for them to do it. They'd rather amend the charge to a reckless driving than just outright dismiss it. Again, it has to be something, pretty serious for them to do that. And I mean, violations of your constitutional right to be even considered.
So very rare.
It's rare. It takes almost a mandate from the Pope in order for them to dismiss it. It's just almost impossible. It's because of the aggressive nature of law enforcement in the state attorney's office.
Well, they're trying to do their best for the citizens out there. You better consider all these factors when you're out there at your holiday parties. And we're going to speak with Paulina a little bit about the holiday parties, I'm sure, in just a little while. Richard, what other advice do you have for Floridians out there?
Well, I can say this, that the driver's license portion is not tied back to field sobriety exercises. So you can actually say, I don't want to do your field sobriety exercises, and it will have no effect on your driver's license.
Now, at that point, you're not assumed guilty?
Well, that's the thing. If you refuse to do field sobriety exercises, the state attorney is going to say, well, that shows a consciousness of guilt. They're allowed to argue that on the case law. But it's not tied back to your driver's license because field sobriety exercises are not required by law.
Now, if you've seen someone take that tact, what is the result of taking that approach and refusing?
Oh, they're going to, well, put it this way. In the state of Florida, if they smell alcohol in your breath, you're going to be arrested. Without a question, you're going to be arrested. Alcohol, the odor of alcohol is the biggest indicator for law enforcement. So field sobriety exercises, all you're doing is providing law enforcement even more probable cause because you're going to get arrested whether you do them or not.
So even if I elect to take the test and I appear to do very well on it, it's still at the discretion of the arresting officer as far as whether I'm going to be arrested or not.
Right, and you're going to be arrested.
Simply by virtue of being pulled over for that offense.
And they smell alcohol. If they smell alcohol, that's the end all be all.
Would a failed, would a pullover for intoxication, but a passed field test, is that in the eyes of the court? Do they say he passed the test or not passed it? Is there such thing as passing a field sobriety test where they say, well, he passed?
Well, it's field sobriety exercises. I just want to be clear about that.
The language.
It's not a test, and
Gotcha.
you don't have to take it. But it certainly goes a long way as to showing whether or not you are impaired. You are an impaired driver. Because let's face it, I've had videos in which the accused is brilliant on the field sobriety exercises. I mean, really good. But they blow like a .15.
So the science is going to get you there. There's nothing you can do about it.
That's the problem. But it does give me some room to negotiate, But ultimately, if it's a good video, then what you want to put in front of a jury potentially or a prosecutor is that you can't trust the machine. Look how well he did on the field sobriety exercise.
Or I would say, has attorney ever challenged the statute in terms of that threshold for intoxication doesn't apply to this individual, because you can see obviously his tolerance is way beyond what typical.
You're allowed to argue anything that the evidence shows or can show. Defense is allowed to do that. Let me give you a perfect example. In Miami, this was a long time ago. I had a co-counsel on the case. We went to trial on a .409.
And what's the threshold again?
.08. That means this man was over 5 times the legal limit. But he was absolutely brilliant on the field sobriety exercises.
And you had video of the field sobriety
We
exercises?
had video of the field sobriety exercises, and I'll never forget as long as I live, but the first question law enforcement asked him was, where do you work? And the guy was like clockwork. Best Buy. What's your social security number? Boom. What's your date of birth? Boom. I mean, he was brilliant on the field sobriety exercises. It was 5-1 to acquit. It was a hung jury. because when they saw
I saw the video.
when they saw how well he did, they said we can't trust that number.
Wow. All right, so there you go. Richard Alexander, Alexander Law, he's got lots of knowledge in this area, and you can see most folks are completely unaware of really what's going on in terms of their rights and how to approach this situation if they are